Hello everyone, this is Trackpad Artist, returning to you all with another weekly installment of my mediocre artistry and decent world building. This week we'll be exploring the final facet of Ryng's glass magic system, the final order of magic we have yet to explore, the manipulation of the heat and cold, the flow of temperature, incalescence magic. In exploring this order of the arcane, we'll be diving into its abilities and limitations, as well as its practical use within Ryng society, before exploring one of the many magical creatures that can use this power, the Kindling. Getting into the meat of the conversation, it is important to understand how Incalescence magic works. It is neither the creation of fire nor ice, but the transferring, manipulation, and condensing of present heat within a caster's environment. In manipulating heat to such an extent, mages who practice the order of Incalescence magic are able to create areas of both extreme heat and extreme cold, by either condensing the heat of their environment into a single point in space, or creating a vacuum of thermal energies. This behavior causes Incalescence magic to be one of the most dangerous orders to learn, as a miscalculation in a mage's temperature siphon can cause inexperienced mages to accidentally freeze or burn parts of their own body, causing near irreparable damage, and in some, less than uncommon cases, even death. To ease this learning process, as well as to amplify a cast's energy efficiency, the combustion or freezing of a mage's environment is best achieved alongside the aid of material components, such as hypercombustible powders to ignite or water to freeze. This not only grants a mage a more solid target for their heat siphon, but allows for easier reactions to occur when their target is one that is more easily frozen or ignited. To this end, Incalescence mages often carry several pouches and flasks of various powders and liquids to aid in their casting, especially within combative contexts where fast ignition and freezes are most necessitated. However, these material components are far from necessary, as when a mage reaches a sufficient level of skill, they can prove to freeze and combust the very air itself, allowing for an even wider display of these incredible magics. This level of skill, however, is the exception to the rule of practicing Incalescence mages, as even at the height of the grand majority of mages, such a skill never comes to reach such a stance. To this extent, with its common reliance on material components and often dangerous casting, Incalescence magic remains largely uncommon within combative settings, more commonly seen within the fields of industry and manufacturing. This pattern is seen throughout Ryng societies for a grand number of reasons, but the most prevalent is the fact that in most cases, it is much cheaper to hire and teach a worker the base fundamentals of Incalescence magic than to purchase a united market machine capable of glass draining, the process that allows for glass's arcane energy to be expended passively over a period of time. In employing and training these workers to perform such arcane duties, these workers are taught the bare minimum of Incalescence magic required to perform their job, which, in turn, leads to a great deal of accidents with the magic, as workers can remain ignorant to the larger skills necessary to safely operate such arcane energies. Even still, this practice remains common within the large industrial sectors of Ryng's capital cities. With such wide use, Incalescence magic has risen to the second most common order among Ryng's faces, second to kinetic, which is also used within this industrial space. These practices, however, leave a staggering majority of Incalescence mages to be confined to the lower classes, a stark contrast to the academic and scholarly spaces other orders of casters commonly find themselves in. Thusly, Incalescence mages are often factory workers and forge operators, tasked with heating, melting, and cooling particular materials throughout the manufacturing process. They aren't typically respected individuals beyond their daily station. The work they do isn't seen as elegant, and they are compensated as such. Those who work these dangerous jobs, at constant risk of self-mutilation, are generally of these lower classes, those with little place to go, often resorting to these long hours out of necessity rather than want. Thanks to this desperation, these workers often remain within these lower classes, not granted the rights nor protections afforded to what are commonly considered to be higher class jobs. Of course, each employer has their own practices, both under and outside of the law, but most commonly, those with the most political power tend to have the greatest amount of leniency when it comes to the practices of the law. The United Market, Ryng's intercircular trade regulator, employs the heavy use of these forge mages within their factories and airships, even when having access to the incredible arcane technologies that can power such structures on their own. Yet there remain things that cannot be accomplished by the mechanical, that which requires a delicate hand, unachievable through the rigid restrictions of mechanics. This class of worker, those under the United Market, find themselves in a higher position than others of a similar station, gifted with the perks of being employed by a Ryng-wide organization rather than a more private business endeavor. This elevated economic status, however, calls for a greater skill set, needing the skill to forge the finest of metals and operate Ryng's most complicated machines. Joint with this boost to one's economic station comes the opportunity to rise amongst the market's ranks, an elevation void within other, smaller businesses. If enough promise is shown, those who've earned it often rise to managerial and even administrative positions, a chance which, when coupled with the market's higher base wages, pulls waves of smiths and craftsmen into its fold. The practices of the United Market, however, are far from respectable in every aspect, as a great deal of what occurs within their factories and forges is far worse than what such an economic and political power would have the public believe. Having such a chokehold on the trading of goods, thanks to their sole access to the technologies behind airships, the United Market thrives on every type of commerce, illicit and otherwise. The United Market deals in weapons, people, and exotic substances, on top of everything the daily man requires. They profit off of war, famine, and plague, manipulating kings and counselors into ruin, while supplying them all the way with the very cause of their downfall, so long as it remains within the market's interest. Yet the good of the market cannot be denied either, as prosperity breeds success just as well, lest we forget that everything has a price. The United Market, however, is far from the only intercircular organization to employ those practiced in Incalescence magics, as the Brass Lotus dedicates many resources to their research of the Order, with most mages among their ranks at least possessing a foundational understanding of its casting. Man, however, is far from the only creature to come to harness the arcane energies of Incalescence magic, as a great many creatures, both large and small, have developed these arcane abilities in order to survive. One such creature is a being of wisp and flame, one whose existence on the fringes of Ring societies has been pushed even farther into obscurity. This creature is known simply as the Kindling. But before we get into that, here's a moment to shill my ongoing projects. I'm currently working on developing a TTRPG rule set for the world of Ryng, looking to be released when we as a community can hit 10,000 subscribers. If you've liked the video thus far and would like to support us in reaching that goal, you can subscribe to the channel here or on Patreon to help me get this done. That'll be all. Let's get back to it. The Kindling, creatures of flame and ice that roam the plains and woods of Ryng, are an incredibly social creature, one whose trills and chirps ring loud within the woods they make home. Physically, they each consist of a frozen stone within their chest, an icy heart of condensed cold that fuels the flames of the Kindling's body. Humanoid in shape, but only growing to a height of around 15 centimeters, their limbs are wisps of yellow-orange flame, a flame that grows brighter as it grows closer to their heart, with 2 specks of white-hot light within their eyes, set within their bulbous heads. Asexual in nature, the Kindling reproduce by splitting off a fragment of their heart and igniting it with their flame, giving life to another of themselves, just as fire itself spreads. They are incredibly curious creatures, whose curiosity for humanity is only matched by their mischievous behavior and reputation as notorious pranksters. Being creatures of flame, though not malicious in intent, the pranks of the Kindling, most commonly made against man, tend to involve practices surrounding arson, often starting small fires that commonly grow into greater threats. Due to the damage these pranks can cause, joint with the many other invasive behaviors of these creatures, humanity have largely labeled the Kindling as pests. Treated as such, the Kindling have been pushed further and further into the isolated wilds between societies, their human neighboring communities having been largely destroyed with the continued expansion of Ryng's cities and villages. This extermination has forced the Kindling into hiding, being a much rarer sight within the modern era, especially when faced with the past stories of previous encounters with these creatures. This forced hiding has only been further amplified by humanity's furthering need of Incalescence essence, present within the Kindling's frozen hearts. A Kindling's essence, however, is not the only thing of use humanity has come to exploit, as the Kindling's very heat is a commodity very much sought after within the ranks of learned artificers and machinists, aware that the Kindling's heat is very fuel efficient. To this end, Kindling are often captured by these industrial groups, trapped and used to heat and fuel their machines of manufacture, a practice that, though widespread among manufacturers that can afford it, has recently come under heavy scrutiny by the larger populace. This controversy stems from the Kindling's intelligence, which upon closer study has been estimated by scholars to be comparable to that of young children, certainly a cause for moral concern. It has been further speculated that the Kindling have complex societies within their wooded seclusion, and a language consisting of their chirps and trills so commonly associated with them. Even so, these concerned movements have been met with apathy from the higher industrial and political minds of Ryng, who remain unwilling to forego the centuries of industrial progress that have risen Ryng's cities into the grand economic powers they are today. This, altogether, outlines the industrial world of Ryng, one fueled by the arcane energies of Incalescence in its many forms, that of glass, mage, and creature. All that said, I do believe we have reached the end of today's discussion. As always, thank you all for watching and sticking around to the end of the video to support me and my work. If you enjoyed this discussion, feel free to leave a like on the video and subscribe for weekly videos recounting my world building and writing processes. Additionally, feel free to leave any suggestions for future topics we should discuss in the comments below, and if you'd like to go a step further in your support of me and Ryng's development, including my TTRPG, consider becoming a Patreon or channel member to not only support me, but gain access to additional perks and benefits. On Patreon, you can gain access to my videos early and ad-free. You can receive a high-definition downloads of my artwork, and engage with me in exclusive supporter chats. All this alongside a slew of other additional perks. The link to my Patreon, as well as our Discord server, as always, will be in the description. Until next time, this has been Trackpad Artist. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you again soon for our next discussion.